Everybody meet with the ministers and this thing. They are right. And if Guptas meet with the minister or anybody, they are wrong. Why? It's something, I don't know, that you had to make it out. What's the reason that Guptas is being targeted or family is being targeted? That we have to be fine.
South Africa has formally asked the United Arab Emirates to extradite Rajesh and Atul Gupta, more popular as the Gupta brothers.
Today we're looking at corrupt practices which the South African president has blamed for the country's economic woes. Since taking office, Cyril Ramaphosa has determined to put a stop to state capture.
The South African government has released its preliminary findings of an investigation into how the wealthy, politically connected Gupta family managed to land a private chartered jet from India at a South African military base last month.
The plane was allowed to land there because of your connections to President Jacob Zuma?
I don't think so at all. I don't think so. That's what I'm saying. Some unknown reason are trying to create this controversy, believe me.
Today we're examining the systematic looting of South Africa's state-owned enterprises between 2009 and 2018. This is a forensic analysis of how a family of private businessmen and a sitting president repurpose government institutions for personal profit. The estimated cost to the country is 100 billion rand. The term state capture describes a specific form of corruption where private interests gain control over state decision-making processes. In South Africa, this control was exercised through the relationship between President Jacob Zuma and the Gupta family, specifically brothers Atul, Ajay, and Rajesh Gupta.
When you think of the Guptas, you imagine their palatial home in South Africa and their sprawling business empire there. But in India, this is their home. The house behind me is the ancestral house of the Gupta brothers. This was built by their grandfather many, many years ago.
The Guptas were Indian-born businessmen who established operations in South Africa during the 1990s. Their initial ventures included computer equipment distribution and media holdings. By the mid-2000s, they had expanded into mining, energy, and transportation sectors. The family's relationship with Zuma predates his presidency, which began in 2009.
Mr. President, Deputy Minister Mcebisi Jonas has already confirmed that the Guptas offered him the position of finance minister before it was even offered to Minister Des van Rooyen. In fact, your former caucus chairperson, Faiki Mentor, has already been on record, the woman you claim you don't know, has already been on record saying, in fact, that she was also offered a cabinet position by the Guptas.
Former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas said he was told by one of the Gupta brothers that if he told about a meeting where he is said to have been offered a bribe to become Finance Minister, he would be killed. He said it took a long time to come forward about the bribe because he did not have confidence in the criminal justice system.
Then he kind of went further. You must understand that we are in control of everything. We're in control of NPA, we're in control of the Hawks, we're in control of National Intelligence Agency. So we're in full control, and the old man will do everything that we tell him to do.
The mechanics of state capture operated through three primary channels: cabinet appointments, board manipulation, and procurement fraud. Each channel reinforced the others, creating a system where government decisions served private profit rather than public interest. The offer came before the sitting finance minister had been removed from office. Jonas was told he would receive 500 million rand and could appoint his own deputy if he cooperated with Gupta business interests. Jonas refused the offer and reported it to then Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. Similarly, African National Congress MP Viji Menta testified that in 2010, she was offered the position of Minister of Public Enterprises while aboard a Gupta-owned aircraft. The offer was conditional on her cancelling South African Airways routes to India and redirecting that business to a Gupta-linked airline. Menta also refused. These incidents demonstrate that the Gupta family believed they could directly control ministerial appointments. The fact that these offers were made indicates that previous appointments may have been successfully influenced through similar methods. The second mechanism involved installing cooperative individuals on the boards of state-owned enterprises and removing executives who resisted interference. This pattern repeated across multiple SOEs with documented precision.
You know, the worst thing about the Guptas for me, other than the blatant corruption and the state capture, fracture would have to be the fact that I felt betrayed by my president. Because I don't know how much of it is true or not. What I do know is, if Jacob Zuma was allowing the Guptas to control our country and choose our ministers, then it wasn't my president being corrupt to me, it was the Guptas telling him what to do. It's like Julius said, the Guptas were in his ear all along.
At Transnet, the state-owned freight and logistics company, Chairman Mafika Mwanazi and Chief Executive Officer Brian Molefe were appointed during periods when Gupta influence over state institutions was strongest. Molefe's tenure as CEO coincided with procurement decisions that heavily favored Gupta-linked companies. At Eskom, the state electricity utility, a similar pattern emerged. Chief Executive Officer Chidiso Mat-Ona was suspended in 2015 after raising concerns about irregular procurement. His suspension was ordered by then Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown, who later faced allegations of Gupta influence.
It's claimed, and I mean this is a claim I'm putting to you, that you and your family will call up a minister appointed by President Jacob Zuma and tell that minister what to do. Is that claim nonsense? It's not true.
Not true at all. That's, I say, very categorically, not true and not at all.
Mat-Ona was replaced by Brian Molefe, who moved from Transnet to Eskom in a transition that benefited Gupta business interests at both organizations. The third mechanism was procurement fraud. State-owned enterprises issue tenders for goods and services worth billions of rand annually. These tenders are supposed to follow competitive processes governed by the Public Finance Management Act. During the state capture period, these processes were systematically corrupted. Tegeta Exploration and Resources, a Gupta-owned mining company, received preferential treatment in contracts with Eskom despite lacking the operational capacity or financial strength typically required for such agreements. The company's acquisition of the Optimum coal mine, which supplied Eskom's Hendrina power station, was facilitated through direct intervention by state officials. The Optimum transaction demonstrates the coordination between different parts of the system. Optimum coal mine was owned by Glencore, a multinational mining company. Eskom, under Gupta line management, imposed penalties on Optimum for coal quality issues. These penalties made the mine financially unsustainable for Glencore. The mine entered business rescue, a legal process similar to bankruptcy protection.
Optimum Colliery was once a leading company in the South African coal sector, but this mine located in the province of Mpumalanga has been placed under business rescue. Like many other mines in the country, miners regularly embark on strikes, and the South African government is forced to pay for social peace through handouts.
They are more relieved now that at least the minister have confirmed that they're not going to lose their jobs. It's going to make everything possible to save the situation. So there's a bit of a relief, but there's still the scare of a bit that if you are dealing with these shareholders that you're dealing with, anything is possible. All of these people that are sitting behind me here are very anti-Gupta.
While Optimum was in business rescue, Eskom made a prepayment of 1.68 billion rand to Tegeta to fund their purchase of the mine from Glencore.
Another coal delivery to the Arnott power station. But who is the supplier?
The trucks that are supplying then the coal then to Eskom are the trucks that are owned then by the Guptas.
Do you have proof that these trucks are owned by the Guptas?
Definitely. Then there is no doubt then around that. We can say that because of AJ Gupta is the chairperson of the company that is supplying then the coal.
We asked Eskom to give us the names of the companies currently supplying coal to the Arnott power station.
The Hendrina mine, which was owned by, or it is owned by Optimum Coal, it was ultimately bought by Tegeta, which obviously is owned by Oak Bay, and I'm sure this is where you are driving the point to, which is also owned by. Part of the ownership obviously is I would say some people call them the Gupta brothers.
This prepayment used Eskom's operational budget to finance a private company's acquisition of a distressed asset. The mine's value had been deliberately suppressed through the quality penalties, allowing Tegeta to acquire it at a fraction of its actual worth. The transaction involved multiple law firms, banks, and consultancies.
The NUM says Optimum is being given an unfair advantage over other bidders as it's literally doing a test run to prove its capabilities. And that's because its owners have friends in high places.
The president has said then publicly that they have got then the relationship with the Guptas, which is now his son, is the one of the core directors of the Guptas. That includes the son of one of the members of the Premier League, which is Ace Makhashula. We are quite aware that it is an open secret that Ace Makhashula's son then is the one of the people that are owning the Guptas. It is an open secret.
In January, President Jacob Zuma admitted that his son is in business with the Guptas.
He worked there for some time and left and started business. And on his own came to discuss with them, to be partner with them in some companies. Now, precisely because he's Zuma, and then Zuma is corrupt. Why? His son is there. Now, I don't understand really.
According to testimony before the Zondo Commission, McKinsey and Company and KPMG provided advisory services related to Eskom contracts during this period. Both firms later acknowledged improper conduct and paid settlements to South African authorities. Transnet represented the largest single victim of procurement fraud during state capture. The parastatal operates South Africa's ports and freight rail network. Between 2012 and 2016, Transnet awarded contracts worth over 41 billion rand that the Zondo Commission later identified as tainted by corruption. The most significant contracts involved locomotive procurement. Transnet needed to modernize its aging rail fleet to improve freight capacity. The procurement process for 1,064 new locomotives became the mechanism for extracting kickbacks. Multiple locomotive manufacturers participated in the tender process. According to evidence presented to the Zondo Commission, certain manufacturers paid commissions to intermediaries linked to the Gupta family in exchange for favorable contract terms. These commissions were built into the contract prices, meaning Transnet paid inflated costs for the locomotives. The contracts were structured to include local manufacturing requirements, creating joint ventures between international manufacturers and South African companies. Some of these South African partners were Gupta-linked entities that contributed minimal actual value but extracted significant fees. China South Rail, one of the locomotive suppliers, paid approximately 400 million rand to a Gupta-linked company called Regiment's Capital. This payment was described as a success fee but functioned as a kickback for securing the contract. Similar arrangements existed with other manufacturers. The inflated costs weren't just margin padding. They represented a systematic transfer of state resources to private individuals through complex corporate structures designed to obscure the ultimate beneficiaries. The locomotives were delivered, but Transnet paid substantially more than market value. The excess went to intermediaries rather than improving South African infrastructure. Denel, the state-owned arms manufacturer, faced a different form of extraction. Denel designs and produces military equipment for the South African National Defence Force and export markets. The company's intellectual property and manufacturing capabilities represent significant strategic assets. During the state capture period, Denel entered into a joint venture called Denel Asia with a Gupta-linked company. The joint venture was structured to give the private partner access to Denel's technology and contracts without adequate compensation to the state entity. The arrangement bypassed normal governance structures and legal oversight mechanisms. The Denel Asia venture was established through decisions made by a board that included individuals appointed during the period of Gupta influence over state institutions. Denel's management raised concerns about the arrangement, but these concerns were overruled by the board. The venture gave Gupta-linked entities access to defense contracts in Middle Eastern and Asian markets. Denel's reputation and technical capabilities were leveraged to secure these contracts, but the profits flowed primarily to the private partner. This effectively privatized state military technology for personal gain. South African Airways faced parallel looting through different methods. SAA is the national carrier, operating international routes and domestic flights. The airline had long-standing financial challenges but became significantly worse during the tenure of board chairperson Judu Maini, a close associate of President Zuma. Under Maini's chairmanship, which lasted from 2012 to 2017, SAA accumulated losses requiring multi-billion rand government bailouts. According to testimony before the Zondo Commission and subsequent legal proceedings, procurement at SAA during this period showed patterns consistent with fraud and irregular expenditure. Contracts for aircraft maintenance, catering services, and route operations were awarded to companies with connections to individuals in Zuma's network. The cumulative impact of state capture across these entities represents more than isolated incidents of corruption. It demonstrates coordinated looting of state resources through simultaneous control of multiple institutions. As of 2026, this case continues with multiple postponements and legal challenges. The Gupta brothers left South Africa in 2016 as state capture investigations intensified.
Their exit from South Africa on this Jet Airways plane very different to their controversial arrival.
Can you assure the South African public that you are in charge of this country if something like this can happen? And I'll qualify that question in this fashion, that if it wasn't for the media who captured the Gupta plane, if it wasn't for the media who captured that convoy leaving the airport, would government even have known?
Welcome back. Now, seems like the global cat and mouse game has finally come to an end. Gupta brothers Rajesh and Atul are currently behind bars in Dubai following news of their arrest last night. This comes after nearly 4 months since Interpol issued a red notice for them in connection with fraud and money laundering charges. If you recall, this is the same family that has been in the news for alleged corruption and their role in state capture. The question now remains, will the Gupta brothers be brought to South Africa to account for their alleged wrongdoing?
Atul and Rajesh Gupta are currently in the United Arab Emirates. South Africa has sought their extradition through official channels. In 2023, the UAE rejected an initial extradition request due to technical deficiencies in the application. The South African government submitted a revised extradition request in 2026, which remains under consideration. Recovery efforts have yielded partial results. The Special Investigating Unit, a government agency with powers to recover misappropriated state funds, has pursued civil claims against companies implicated in state capture. By 2025, the SIU recovered nearly 11 billion rand from companies including SAP, McKinsey, and KPMG. These companies settled rather than face prolonged litigation. SAP, a software company that secured Transnet contracts during the state capture period, paid approximately 1 billion rand in settlement. McKinsey paid nearly 1 billion rand to settle claims related to their Eskom work. KPMG paid hundreds of millions of rand related to irregular consulting fees. These settlements represent a fraction of the estimated 100 billion rand total cost but demonstrate that legal mechanisms can recover some misappropriated funds. The recovered money returns to the national treasury rather than directly to the affected SOEs. Structural reforms implemented between 2024 and 2026 attempt to prevent future state capture. In 2024, the South African government abolished the Ministry of Public Enterprises, which had oversight responsibility for most SOEs during the corruption period. SOE governance was transferred to the presidency. The restructuring creates a proposed holding company model where state-owned enterprises report to a centralized entity with professional management rather than political appointees. The model draws from international examples where SOEs operate at arm's length from direct ministerial control. The effectiveness of these reforms depends on implementation and sustained political will. The same institutional structures can be repurposed for corruption if the individuals controlling them prioritize personal gain over public interest. The reforms address the governance framework, but they cannot guarantee ethical behavior from future leaders. The economic legacy of state capture extends beyond the quantified losses. Eskom's operational capacity was degraded during this period, contributing to the load-shedding crisis that affects South Africa's economy through 2026. Transnet's inefficiency in moving freight constrains export capacity. Denel's weakened position reduces South Africa's defense manufacturing capabilities. SAA required restructuring and partial privatization to continue operating. These operational deficits represent opportunity costs. The money stolen through inflated contracts could have modernized infrastructure, improved service delivery, or reduced government debt. Instead, it enriched private individuals while degrading state capacity. The 100 billion rand figure represents an estimate based on identified irregular expenditure, proven corrupt contracts, and economic analysis of SOE performance degradation. The actual total may be higher when accounting for contracts that haven't been thoroughly investigated and indirect economic damage from reduced state capacity. This is the forensic record of state capture. A network of private individuals and public officials coordinated to extract state resources through simultaneous control of multiple institutions. They offered cabinet positions to compliant individuals. They installed cooperative boards at state-owned enterprises. They manipulated procurement processes to favor their companies. The system worked because it operated across multiple institutions simultaneously. Controlling one ministry or one SOE board wouldn't have been sufficient. The coordination across Transnet, Eskom, Denel, and other entities created mutually reinforcing corruption that was difficult to stop from within the system. The legal accountability process continues, but convictions remain limited relative to the scale of the corruption. The Gupta brothers live in Dubai. Jacob Zuma faces charges but hasn't been convicted of state capture-related crimes. The individuals who implemented board decisions and signed contracts have largely avoided consequences. The 11 billion rand recovered represents progress but constitutes roughly 11% of the estimated total loss. The majority of stolen funds remain in private hands, transferred through complex corporate structures to jurisdictions where South African authorities have limited reach. The analysis documents how institutional control was weaponized for private profit. The 100 billion rand estimate quantifies the damage. The ongoing legal cases represent attempts at accountability. The structural reforms attempt to prevent recurrence. The economic damage persists.
That is why we are calling then to all South Africans then to say, time has now come then to make sure that now we are not going back then to the apartheid then by being colonized then in our country by the people that are the foreigners, which are the Guptas, that are not from South Africa.